Ready? Okay. The Torah portion for this week is Vayechi. It's the last Torah portion in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, and it means he lived. And this is about when Jacob finds out that his son Joseph is still alive. And also it means that now that Jacob has found out that Joseph is alive, Jacob is really alive too.
Yeah.
Because the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, has returned to Jacob, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's taken two ways.
Yeah, I was listening to this teaching and it talked about how this was like really living it up for Jacob. Everything he did, he was, everything, he was blessed in every way. And
It's a long time to be depressed.
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah.
So we go, it's in Genesis chapter 47, verse 28 through chapter 50, verse 26. The Haftarah is 1 Kings 2, 1 through 12. And the Brit Hadashah is John chapter 3, 1 through 19. And so for the gematria, the numbers, and the pictograms, we start out, we have the letter Vav, which is, the pictogram is the peg, which means add, secure, or hook, and it's the number 6, which represents man. And then we have the hand, work, throw, or worship, and it's the number 10, which is the 10 statements of creation, and the 10 words on Mount Sinai. And then we have the letter Het, which is a tent wall, divide half outside. It's the number 8, which is a new beginning. And then we have the letter Yud again, which is the hand, work, throw, worship, the number 10 again. It adds up to 34, and the digits add up to 7. And 7 represents completion, and number 3 represents the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, or the Torah, the writings of the prophets, or the threefold cord. And then the number 4 represents authority and government, and it also represents creation. Okay, and actually in this we see Yeshua too. Because what? He's the one that does all the work. He's the one that we worship, right? And he's the one that's going to divide the sheep from the goats. And every person that doesn't know him will not be able to enter the city. They'll be outside. Okay? So there is a tie-in to Yeshua here. And another thing, as we start this Torah portion, we'll have Debbie read. Now we're going to get right into it because there's a lot in here. Just go ahead and read chapter 4, Genesis 47, verse 28 to the end of the chapter.
Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. The time approached for Israel to die, so we called for a son for Joseph and said to him, "Please, if I found favor in your eyes, please place your hand under my thigh and do kindness and truth with me. Please do not bury me in Egypt, for I will lie down with my fathers, and you shall transport me out of Egypt and bury me in their tomb." And he said, "I personally will do as you have said." He replied, "Swear to me." And he swore to him. Then Israel prostrated himself toward the head of the bed.
Okay. So we find now what? That Jacob is going to be how old when he dies?
147.
147. And they said in the Midrash that was because of the 33 Hebrew words he spoke, where he said that his days, remember when he spoke before Pharaoh, what he said?
Yeah, his days were troubled and few and
Troubled and few, and didn't reach those of his fathers, right? And they say in the Midrash that because of that, that God subtracted 1 year from his life for each word that he spoke against what the Lord said.
Oh, wow.
33 years. They said in the Midrash that he was supposed to live to be 180 like Isaac.
proving once again how powerful our words are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because what the Lord did, they said after Jacob spoke that, the Lord reminded him of all of the blessings that he gave him. Now, so Jacob lives 17 years with Joseph in Syria and Canaan, and now he's going to live 17 years with Joseph in Egypt. And there's something interesting about the number 17 also. Because the word, in Hebrew, the word tov, okay, the word tov means good.
Yeah.
And so the first 17 years with Joseph are good, and the last 17 years with Joseph are good. And we've seen in the scripture how Joseph is a picture, a type of Yeshua in the previous Torah portions. And it's a very interesting thing that the gematria for Yeshua is 386, and the digits of that gematria add up to 17 also. Okay, so Yeshua is God, but he's good, right? And we have the one is what? The one represents Hashem, and the 7 represents completion. So you have God's completion. Now all the tribes are complete. Jacob's fulfilled what he was called to do, to have the 12 tribes. And if you add the digits up, the 1 and 7 adds up to 8, and you have a new beginning. And in this Torah portion, the children of Israel have a new beginning outside of the land of Canaan, in the land of Egypt. But when they went down to the land of Egypt, what did Hashem promise? He promised that he would go down to Egypt with them and be with them in Egypt the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm. And he was.
So, some history here. There's a town in Egypt called Thiu. And it's, according to the Coptics, it was inhabited by Jacob when he was in the land of Egypt. And it's a very ancient town. And originally it was called Motzalei Jacob, which means the tabernacle of Jacob. That was the name of the town in Egypt. The town where Jacob lived was called the tabernacle of Jacob, which is in the land of Goshen. And they say from this town, Thium in Egypt, it's only a 2-hour walk. The original site, they say, of where Jacob lived and the town was.
Does it say what type of land this was? Was it like?
Well, it's a very good pasture land for all their cattle and everything in the land of Goshen.
Uh-huh.
And that land, we remember, was deeded to Sarah when Abraham and Sarah were in Egypt. And Pharaoh gave all these presents and different gifts to Abraham and Sarah. The land of Goshen was given to Sarah. And this is based on Dan Slev's relation of a voyage to Egypt. It says that Jacob was 130 years old when he appeared before Pharaoh and died at the age of 147. And this is the same age as given by Polyhistor, another historian, and from Demetrius, a heathen writer, so they all agree with the ages that are in the scripture.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now we go to Genesis chapter 48. And go ahead, Angela, and read 1 through 7.
And it came to pass after these things that someone said to Joseph, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him. Jacob was told, "Behold, your son Joseph has come to you." So Israel exerted himself and sat up on the bed. Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai had appeared to me in Luz, in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me. He said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make you a congregation of nations, and I will give this land to your offspring after you as an eternal possession. And now your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before my coming to you in Egypt, shall be mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuben and Simeon. But progeny born to you after them shall be yours. They will be included under the name of their brothers with regards to their inheritance. But as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died on me in the land of Canaan on the road, while there was still a stretch of land to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the road to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem.
Okay. So, Jacob, what does Jacob do now? He recognizes Joseph as the son of his beloved Rachel and considers Joseph to be his firstborn son, right? And what he does is he's giving Joseph here a double portion. He's adopting, okay? He's adopting Joseph's first 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, as his own sons, okay, so that they have the same inheritance rights when they go to the land of Canaan as all the other tribes. Okay, so Joseph is actually getting a double portion in the land of Israel, in the land of Canaan. Okay, a portion for Manasseh and another portion for Ephraim. Each one of his sons is counted just like any one of the other tribes. Okay, so their status has been raised, right? So instead of being grandchildren now, they're counted as his actual children. And so they have all the rights and benefits of a son of Jacob. But any sons that Joseph has after this are Joseph's, and they get whatever within the tribe. So they don't have the same status as Ephraim and Manasseh.
It's a picture of how, you know, we're adopted as
Right.
sons of God.
Right. The
By
scripture,
being obedient and to his word and believing in Yeshua the Messiah.
Right.
We're adopted into that same
right,
children of Israel.
right. So we're adopted into the family, and you know what? Once you're adopted, you have an inheritance in the land of Israel too, in the land of Canaan. Just like Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. You have an inheritance
They were part,
in the land.
they were part Egyptian and part Hebrew, right? Half and half.
Okay, so the double
That's where
portion
that,
is there.
you know, it says, I thought that was kind of interesting because it says, I will make you a congregation of nations.
Wow.
That's exactly what he's
Right.
doing right there.
Right, right. And actually, they say in the Midrashes that Abraham was actually the father of 33 nations when they figure it all out between all his children. And if you take a look at this, the standard of Ephraim was supposed to precede the other ones.
Manasseh?
Yeah, precedes Manasseh. And according to the numbers, the tribe of Ephraim had 40,500 men, and the tribe of Manasseh had 32,200. Later on, Manasseh has 52,700, and Ephraim only has 32,500.
Were those Hebrew names they had or Egyptian names?
No, they're Hebrew names.
Okay.
they were given to them, they were given to the sons by Joseph.
Okay. You know what they?
One means, okay, Manasseh means to forget,
Right.
okay? And Ephraim means to be fruitful because he was fruitful in the land,
Oh,
okay? Okay, so it goes on, and Elmer, could you go ahead and start at verse 8, and that, I believe, will start the blessing moment on Ephraim and Manasseh.
all right. And Israel beheld Joseph's sons and said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom Elohim has given me here." And he said, "Bring them, I pray you, to me, and I will bless them." Now the eyes of Israel were dim for age, so that he could not see. And he brought them near to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, "I have not thought to see your face, and lo, Elohim has let me see your seed also." And Joseph brought them out from between his knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim and in his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near unto him. And Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it upon Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand upon Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly. For Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The Elohim before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who had fed me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the middle of the earth." And when Joseph saw that his father had his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put your right hand upon his head." And his father refused and said, "I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations." And he blessed them that day, saying, "In you will Israel bless, saying, Elohim make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh." And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Joseph, "Behold, I die, but Elohim will be with you, and bring you again to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given you one portion above your brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite, with my sword and with my bow."
Okay. So what do we have now? We have the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do we say every Shabbat? We're supposed to bless the children, right? In whose name?
Ephraim.
That they would be like Ephraim and Manasseh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the girls, we bless them in the name of what?
The matriarchs.
The matriarchs, right?
That happens quite a bit when they get them switched around for the blessings, you know.
Yeah, the firstborn's not always the firstborn.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that happens. It happened several times.
Right. And so in this blessing, though, there's several things that happen on this. It says that Joseph, as a part of this, he comes to Jacob And he says, well, why was Rachel buried on the road instead of in the cave of Machpelah where everybody's at? And he explained to Joseph that the Ruach explained to him that when the children of Israel went into captivity, that they would pass by Rachel's tomb on the road, and that Rachel would pray and intercede for them as they went into captivity. And that's why Rachel was buried along the road. It was told Jacob by the Spirit to bury her there.
He really gave Jacob some great visions and insight. I read in that he also gave him what he named the Messiah, and that he gave him what it would be like in the end of times.
Yeah. And so it goes on. What happens is this. During these blessings, it says that Jacob has the two children, and he tells Joseph, who are these? And in the Midrash, it says the reason that he says that is because as soon as he goes to bless them, the Ruach departs from Jacob. The Spirit departs and he can't bless them. And he said what happened was that Jacob was given a prophetic vision that King Jehu would descend from Manasseh and King Ahab from Ephraim. So he said, who are these? From what marriage were they born that they should be unworthy of a blessing? Who are these?
Oh, and Jeroboam too from Ephraim.
Yeah, Jeroboam. So how is it possible that they are to be ancestors of kings who will induce Israel to worship idols? And Joseph answered, they are my righteous sons, as righteous as I am, born from a marriage of holiness, and gave the marriage contract to his father Jacob and showed him in the Midrash. So Jacob said, well, let me feel them and kiss them, because he couldn't see. It says that his eyes were heavy, that he could only see if he lifted up his eyelids with his hands.
Really?
And so Joseph put his sons between Jacob's knees, and he kissed and embraced them, but the Ruach didn't return. So Joseph and Ephraim and Manasseh prayed, and the Spirit returned to Jacob, and then he blessed them. But he spoke to them, and he said this is what Jacob said, whatever worldly greatness you possess is only temporary. Right? Everything on this earth is temporary.
Very temporal. I just realized that a few years ago.
And
Temporal, this
so,
world, nothing lasts.
We have to realize that's what the Sukkah is all about during the time of Sukkot.
Yeah.
To remind us that this earthly tabernacle, this tent that we dwell in, is only temporary.
That's right.
And so Joseph told his children to pray that Jacob would bless them. And as soon as the Ruach returned to Jacob, of course, he placed Manasseh at Jacob's right hand and Ephraim at the left hand, and Jacob crossed his hands. And that was because Jacob was given a vision that the younger one, would be greater than the older one. And this was the reason, the reason for the switch. The younger one, Ephraim, would become greater than the older because Joshua was from the tribe of Ephraim. And so Jacob says, God before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, moved swiftly to fulfill his will, who has sustained me this day as a shepherd that feeds his flock, sending me an angel to redeem me every time I had a need. Right? And the angel redeemed him from what? From Esau and from Laban. May the angel bless the lads Ephraim and Manasseh. And that also referred to all of the descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh. Joshua and Gideon also both encountered angels. He said, let the lads be called by my name and the names of my forefathers, Abraham and Isaac. The Jewish nation is sometimes referred to as Ephraim and Joseph. And Yirmiyahu 31:9 and Amos chapter 5 verse 15. It says, let them increase like fish. Okay, the fish are like swarms.
They lay lots of eggs too.
Swarms. And they say that because the fish are covered by water, they're not affected by the evil eye. That's one of their traditions.
What was that verse in Jeremiah?
Jeremiah, verse 31, chapter 31, verse 9.
Thank you.
That's for this Torah portion?
That's where that's mentioned,
That's where it's mentioned.
about the fish.
So Joseph protected his eyes and refrained from looking where he was not supposed to. That was Potiphar's wife trying to tempt him. Therefore his tribe was blessed with protection. The blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh was a model to all Jewish parents who would bless their sons. May Hashem cause you to be like Ephraim and Manasseh.
How do most people know what they're gonna be involved into eventually,
Well, Jacob was given a vision by God what to pray, and he saw the future. Now it says here, he tells Joseph, my right hand goes on Ephraim's head because the Ruach has shown me that Joshua would descend from Ephraim, but from Manasseh would descend the judge Gideon. But Joshua was more famous. And he tells Joseph, do you think I am unaware of the fact? Says the Spirit tells me things that you don't know. I knew Reuben's motives when he sinned. I knew Yehuda's thoughts when he went to Tamar. Do you think I didn't know which one of your sons is older?
Yeah.
So Jacob was led by the Spirit as he gave the blessing to the two sons.
The Spirit was given pretty selectively back then. Just certain people, especially the prophets, but
And he said, he's told Joseph, I am about to die, but God will be with you and send you a redeemer to liberate you from the Egyptians. And Jacob revealed 3 signs to Joseph about who the redeemer from Egypt would be. There would be 3 signs. The first one was that he would use the expression Anoki. The second was that he would appoint the Torah sages to be the leaders. And the third thing was he would use the expression Pakod Yifkod. And before Joseph died, he gave Jacob's message to Sirach, Esher's daughter, the one that was blessed by Jacob, the one in the Midrash that said lived all the way through the time in Egypt and even into the wandering in the wilderness and beyond.
how long were they in Egypt? 300 or 400 years?
Well, they were in Egypt under persecution for 210 years. Okay, that started when a Pharaoh arose that knew not Joseph.
Yeah.
But Joseph ruled for 80 years. And in the Midrash, it says the first 40 years he reigned as viceroy, under the Pharaoh, and that after the Pharaoh died, he actually became the king of Egypt for the next 40 years until he died. And so when Moses came, these were all the things that Moses did. Moses said so they would recognize Moses as the deliverer from Egypt.
Yeah. I wonder if they built any pyramids over there, any of those
Well,
grandiose structures.
there's all kinds of different theories and ideas. Yeah, the pyramids are very ancient.
Yeah, yeah, they're older than even the Egyptians.
Yeah, they're very old. Okay.
That's interesting, because I just read today about how the descendants of Ham,
Yeah.
his children was named Mitzrayim, actually settled there in that region.
Yep.
That's along the Nile, and that they rose to power by going to these little countries and overwhelming and then taking them as forced labor, and they are the ones like who built those pyramids. That's how Egypt all began after the flood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool.
And so we read here that Jacob promised Joseph, he gave him a reward, okay, because Joseph promised to bring him to Israel for burial, right? And so he gives him Shechem. It says that he took Shechem from the hands of the Amorites at the time when I stood with my bow and arrow to help Simeon and Levi after they had slain Shechem. He said, then all of the Amorite kings came to kill us, and we defeated them. So it says Joseph and his father Jacob were very happy after the blessing. And some of the other children were upset because of all of these blessings that Jacob gave to Joseph. But Jacob tells them, I have sufficient blessings for everybody. And everybody is going to be blessed. Okay, so Joseph and Ephraim and Manasseh didn't get everything because all the other tribes were blessed also. So now Jacob will bless all the other sons. Okay. And when we talk about these sons, okay, about younger and older, you have Abel and Cain, Shem and Japheth, Abraham and Nahor, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Moses and Aaron, David. And so there's a lot of cases where the younger one ends up being the leader, or the one that's spiritually blessed. Okay. So in these shall Israel bless. And it says that Shechem actually was given to Joseph, and they say that Jacob bought it from Hamor for 100 pieces of silver. But they also had a war with the Amorites. Okay, Debbie, you want to continue now? We'll get to the other tribes now.
Kenny, there's an extra Bible right there. Do you want it?
How many verses?
Isn't that a Bible?
Chapter 49.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
49, huh?
Chapter 49. just look at this for a minute. Okay, 1 through,
What?
go ahead, 1 through 12.
Long time.
Yeah, 1 through 12.
And Jacob called for his sons and said, Assemble yourselves, and I will tell you what will befall you in the end of days. Gather yourselves and listen, O sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you're my firstborn, my strength, my initial vigor, foremost in rank, and foremost in power. Water-like impetuosity, you cannot be foremost, because you mounted your father's bed. Then you desecrated him who ascended my couch. Simeon and Levi are comrades. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. Into their conspiracy may my soul not enter. With their congregation, do not join, O my honor. For in their rage they murdered people, and at their whim they hamstrung an ox. Accursed is their rage, for it is intense, and their wrath for its heart. I will separate them within Jacob, and I will disperse them in Judah and Israel. Judah, you, your brothers, shall acknowledge. Your hand shall be at your enemies' neck. Your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. A lion cub is Judah. From the prey, my son, you elevated yourself. He crouches, lies down like a lion, and like an awesome lion, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a scholar from among his descendants, until Shiloh shall arrive, and his will be an assemblance of nations. He will tie his donkey to the vine branch his donkey's foal. He will launder his garments in wine, and his robe in the blood of grapes, red-eyed from wine, and white-toothed from milk.
Okay,
That's Judah.
that's Judas. Okay, so here we have,
You can hold it if you want.
Yeah.
Get the
several of his sons, and it starts out according to Nachmanides when it talks about the last days. Okay, the last days refers to the days of the Messiah and the ancient writings. And Jacob called all his sons, not just because he wanted to bless all of his sons, each one of the tribes, he wanted to reveal the end times and when the return of the Messiah would be. So he wanted to tell them the whole panorama, the whole plan of history, all the way from the beginning, all the way to the day that the Messiah would return. And this is according to the Zohar. But what happened was the Lord would not allow Jacob to do that. It was revealed, Jacob saw everything, but he wasn't able to communicate it to his children. And that's because he didn't want the children to be discouraged about the length of time that would take place before the Messiah came. And he didn't want to show them, reveal to them how many years the captivities would be and the exiles would be, because he didn't want his children to be discouraged.
But he gave hints
But he gave hints.
in these blessings,
In
right?
the blessings, right. And so he couldn't give them actual timeline. But they say that in this section, it's the seal and the key of the whole law and of all the prophecies, all the way until the days of the Messiah are all recorded in here.
Yeah.
Because it talks about Shiloh coming, right? And it talks about the days of the Messiah.
Yeah, I bet you could study just Judah's blessing and probably talk for days about
For
it.
days.
Yeah.
And so what will happen here says that Reuben lost his birthright,
Right.
but it says here, we'll use some of the Midrash and some of my notes here. But Reuben lost the birthright and its privileges. But in 1 Chronicles chapter 5, he is still called by Jacob his firstborn. Okay, he was the firstborn of Jacob's strength. Okay, he wasn't given the
He
privilege.
was the first seed.
Right, he was the first seed of Jacob. And so Reuben was recognized for that.
Can't change that.
Can't change that.
Stays maybe, but.
Okay? The Targums say that Reuben would have received 3 portions above his brothers if he didn't sin. He was to receive the birthright with the double portion, the priesthood, and the kingdom. So, in other words, as the firstborn, he had the double portion, the priesthood, right? Because the firstborn was the one in the family that made the sacrifice, okay, the priest, and the kingdom. So, as the firstborn, he was destined to be the king. But Jacob tells him that he lost everything by sinning, and from what excellency and dignity and grandeur and power that he fell from. Joseph received Reuben's double portion. Judah received the kingdom. Judah is always recognized as the king. Judah is represented by the lion. Yeshua HaMashiach, the Messiah, is the lion of the tribe of Judah. So Judah is the kingdom. And Levi was given the priesthood. So the 3 portions that Reuben was supposed to get were given to 3 different people.
Maybe that's a good thing.
And it says, Reuben did not excel in honor, dignity, wealth, riches, or numbers, and he received no share. Okay. Now, in the Midrash, it talks about Reuben, and it says this: you were outstanding, and you deserve to be praised. You were different from most of the other firstborns, who were all thieves.
Was he redheaded?
And robbers.
Hey.
And robbers.
I'm ready.
Okay, here he was talking about Cain and Abel, Esau and Jacob. The firstborn was usually a problem. Okay? He said most firstborn hate their brothers, Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, Esau and Jacob. But Reuben, you were kind and protected your brother and told them not to spill Joseph's blood. Right? Reuben was the one that intervened to try and protect Joseph and save him at least from being killed.
Right, but it was his idea to put him in the pit.
Yeah.
Or he probably would have been killed.
Because he felt that that was the only way he could satisfy the anger of his brothers, was if he did that. If he did something that was too easy, the brothers wouldn't have accepted what he did.
He had impetuous thinking.
Right. And so it says here,
He didn't think before he spoke.
right, it says, you were the vigor and the beginning of my strength, the strength of my manhood. Your descendants will be strong war heroes and conquer Israel at the head of the army. You should have been supreme over your brothers. Okay, the right of the firstborn, the kahuna, which is the priesthood, and the monarchy. Since you were firstborn, you were entitled to a double portion, and the priesthood and royalty. You lost all 3.
Well, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
When I was reading through this, I went through and looked back, and Reuben told Jacob when Benjamin was in Egypt,
Right.
and he said, you may slay my 2 sons if I
Yep.
fail to bring him
Right.
back to you.
Yep.
And I think, well, that's not gonna make Jacob happy,
No,
so that
no.
was speaking before you
No,
think too,
no.
right?
So it says, due to his hastiness and anger, he said he was like water. You will not be elevated to any superior position because he didn't think before he acted. He was impetuous. He says also, in your jealousy for your mother, you disarranged my couch,
Yeah.
the couch of your father, and that of the Shekinah,
Right.
which dwelled with Jacob.
Uh-huh.
So when he disturbed Jacob, he disturbed the presence of the Shekinah also.
Wasn't it kind of interesting? You say he was gonna have 3 rewards, right?
Yep,
And then he had these 3 impetuous acts,
yep.
and measure for measure.
And so Reuben left, it says, his ears ringing from the rebuke. Then he calls in Simeon and Levi. Says here that what they acted as brothers to Dinah, their sister Dinah, to protect her, but not to Joseph, right?
Mhm.
And it says that the weapons of Simeon and Levi are stolen.
Really?
Okay, because why? Because Jacob is a Zadik. Jacob is a righteous man.
Mhm.
Jacob fights with light and defends with the sword. Okay?
Mhm.
Just like the video we watched on Hanukkah, right? So Jacob fights with the light, not the sword. And they say that when Simeon and Levi took the sword, okay, they were following the character of Esau,
Yeah.
who was a man of war, a man of the sword, a man that lived by the sword. It says if you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right?
Right.
And so they say that they were entering into a profession that was not theirs. Okay? That was the method used by Esau, not the method used by Jacob. Okay, Jacob's actions were to present the light. And when Simeon and Levi went in and destroyed Shechem, okay, it made them, okay, in the eyes of all the surrounding nations, they had made a promise, right, to the people in Shechem that they would do certain things. And Levi and Simeon violated that vow
Right.
by killing the men of Shechem. And so their word was what? They made a vow, they didn't keep it, so their word didn't mean nothing. And because of that, what they did is they hindered Jacob's ministry to all of the Gentile nations that were surrounding them. He couldn't witness to them because of what his sons did.
Right.
It's a bad example.
A bad example.
Yeah.
And so, well, what are you going to tell us about? Look what your sons did.
Yeah. It reflected on
It
the
reflected
father.
on Jacob.
That's what happens too.
And then who descended from Simeon and Levi? You got Korach, right?
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
Little guy Zimri.
Yeah, Zimri.
Okay, that's Zimri and Cosby later on in the Torah,
Right.
we'll see. And that's part of this here. It says, and then Jacob says, the sword is an object of Esau, not of my family. We fight with the light, we fight in the spirit, right? In the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, it says what? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, right? And the high places of the enemy and all these different things. It's a war in the spirit to defeat the enemy. It's not a physical battle. To defeat the enemy physically, you win the spiritual battle, and God fights the physical battle,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
So because of what they did, because they weren't reflecting Jacob's character as a man of peace, a man of shalom, he says this, let my name not be mentioned in their gathering. And it says here, when the tribe of Simeon gathered in rebellion against Moses and supported Zimri, who brought the Midianite woman to the tabernacle, Jacob's name wasn't mentioned. Okay. Let my glory not be associated with their congregation. When Korah's followers assembled against Moses, let not my name be listed as his forefather. So he didn't want their actions to reflect on him, because that's not who Jacob is. And so it says here that Jacob did not want his name mentioned because he wanted everyone to know that these revolts stemmed from the anger of instigators and not from an evil nature inherited from Jacob. Jacob's name is not mentioned in the Torah in connection with the incident of Korah. It says Korah, the son of Itzhar, the son of Kahas, son of Levi, but it doesn't say son of Jacob. Okay, it goes on for Simeon. It says Simeon and Levi satisfied their desire for revenge, right? Because they killed the men of Shechem. So in other words, instead of making peace and showing the light, they went into warfare.
That's how war started a lot of times. Just a spark.
Okay. So it says here, they blocked converts from joining the children of Israel. The Gentiles were afraid to trust Jacob because of Simeon and Levi. Also, said what? Jacob cursed their wrath. He didn't curse Simeon and Levi, but he cursed their wrath, that characteristic that they had.
The spirit of wrath.
The spirit of wrath. And their anger was fierce. So Jacob saw that Simeon and Levi were people that had a spirit of anger, a temper. Okay, all of us have a little bit of a temper sometimes, right?
Yes, we all have a breaking point.
And some people's fuses are shorter than other people's,
Yes, yes.
depending on the circumstances, which is really not supposed to have any effect on us, right?
Oh, human.
Kind I don't like to be around too much. Find out.
But this is what happens because of what they did. He said that he would divide them in Jacob. Because it is dangerous that the whole world if these two tribes stay together. And so what he does is Simeon has an inheritance in the land of Canaan, but they have cities that are disconnected, and they're all within the inheritance of the tribe of Judah. So Simeon's inheritance is surrounded by Judah.
What's that one big blob?
Right? So Simeon is surrounded by Judah, the line. Okay, and the Levites have no inheritance except for the 48 Levitical cities. And so Simeon and Levi are kept separate, and they're scattered throughout Israel.
The Levites ended up with no land ownership, though,
Yeah,
didn't
they were the priests. Their
Well, they were the
inheritance was
priests,
God.
okay? Their inheritance was God.
Yeah.
They were the priests. They had Levitical cities, and they had fields,
Temple.
okay? And they took care of the sacrifices and the tabernacle or the temple, depending on the time
And they
frame.
were supported by the other,
And they were supported by the other tribes.
Yeah.
That's what the tithe was
yeah.
for, the priesthood.
Okay, so Simeon had no distinct part by itself in the land of Canaan, but had their inheritance out of the portion within the inheritance of the tribe of Judah. Their cities did not join one another. According to Aben Ezra, they say that their cities were scattered up and down in the tribe of Judah. And when they increased, they went outside the land to Mount Seir, according to 1 Chronicles 4:39. Many of the tribe of the Simeonites became teachers of the law and lived among the tribes. According to the Jerusalem Targum, I will divide the tribe of Simeon, and they will be scribes and teachers of the law in the congregation of Jacob.
By law, you're saying Torah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Levites had their 48 cities in the tribes, no inheritance in the land of Canaan. Okay, so they were
So they
just,
both kind of devoted then their work to God,
yeah.
to Hashem.
And basically this was Jacob's way, okay, of bringing Simeon and Levi to a place of teshuvah, to bring them back into the tribes.
Right, because they were held to a higher standard.
Right. And so Simeon and Levi, basically because of Shechem, the incident there, they had to learn the way of shalom, the way of peace, and not the way of anger. And so they had to repent of their anger and take up peace. Now we come to Judah. And Judah is acknowledged by all the brothers. Okay, what does the name Judah mean?
Praise.
Praise, right? Praise is at the front lines of the battle, right?
Yeah.
Because what? God inhabits the praises of his people. And so when they went out to battle, Judah was supposed to go first because God would lead them into battle and defeat the enemy for them.
Yeah.
So with Judah, what happens is he realizes, okay, originally Jacob suspected Judah of killing Joseph. But then he finds out that he was wrong. And so he chooses Judah to be the king. And so Yeshua HaMashiach, Messiah, is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So what happens out of Judah? Okay, King David and all of the kings are descendants of Judah.
Yep,
Okay?
King David.
King David and all of the
Oh,
kings are descendants of Judah. Nachshon, the head of the Nesaim, is also from the tribe of Judah. Bezalel, the builder of the tabernacle, is a descendant of Judah. Asniel, the first judge, is from the tribe of Judah. And the banner of the tribe of Judah travels at the head of all the tribes in the wilderness. Okay, all three, okay, the tabernacle and both temples were built by descendants of Judah. Okay, the first temple by King Solomon, a descendant of Judah. The second temple by Zerubbabel, a descendant of the tribe of Judah. The future temple, the final temple, the Messianic temple, will be built by a descendant of Judah, the Messiah.
Is that the one that's gonna be built?
That's Ezekiel's temple, not the one that they're talking about now. There's also a tribulation temple.
Yeah.
That's different.
Tribulation temple.
That's
Yeah.
different.
And
Because
Antichrist is
the
going in.
tribulation temple, okay, the tribulation temple will be desecrated by the Antichrist.
Right.
the anti-Messiah.
Antichrist, Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that the next one though?
Yeah, that's the
They
next
mean
one.
well, but it's gonna go wrong.
Yeah. Okay, so the children of Israel mean well, and when the children, and actually it's a command of the scripture, that when they're in the land of Israel, they're
To have
supposed to build the temple.
Yeah,
It's a requirement, it's part of the Torah, it's part of fulfilling the mitzvot.
70 years.
we've just been prevented from doing
Yeah,
so.
they're really into that over there right now. I hear.
They are.
Well, they
That's
have
been for a
right
long
now,
time.
okay, right now they have, two different groups. They have the Temple Mount Faithful and the Temple Institute, and they've cut the stones for the temple.
So I heard,
They've made all of the articles they need
Yeah.
to perform the sacrifices in the temple. They have the new menorah sitting right at the foot,
The wall.
at
Glass.
the wall, at the wall.
Did they find
And
the ark?
actually, the
No.
head of the Temple Mount Faithful, Gershon Solomon, has the cornerstones for the temple on a pickup truck, ready to go right in there whenever he
Aren't they
gets a
supposed to
chance.
have the, I saw something about the red heifer, they found
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
perfect red
Yeah.
heifer for the ashes. but
Well,
then
what they have to have is they have to have the ashes of the red heifer, because the priesthood has to be cleansed from death, from contact with a dead body,
Right.
before they can perform the service of the temple.
Then they have to have the Ark of the Covenant, though, couldn't they?
Well, they've made a copy, okay, they've made a replica of the Ark of the Covenant,
Ah.
but they believe that in the temple that they're going to build, that God will reveal to them the location
Right.
of the original Ark,
I think it
and
still
that they will
exists
use the
somewhere.
original Ark.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
The
it's-
original Ark was hidden
Yeah,
by Jeremiah.
That's the mercy seat of God.
they probably hid a lot of stuff.
Oh, there's a lot of things that were
Overrun by the
hidden.
Greeks and the
Yeah.
Romans, the Babylonians, and the Syrians.
Okay, so it goes on that Judah's hand is at the neck of his enemies. David will pursue his enemies and turn their back on him in flight. Your descendants will be archers and shoot arrows at the enemy. And why were they given the blessing of being able to shoot their enemies in the neck? And they say this was given to the tribe of Judah because Judah bent his neck and became humble and admitted his guilt in the incident of Tamar.
Oh,
Because Judah, okay, Judah didn't hide his sin. Okay, Judah didn't hide his sin.
He took
He
responsibility.
came out in the open and said, I did this thing this is my responsibility, as Tamar is more righteous than I am. So he admitted his guilt and did teshuvah, he repented.
He's afraid of losing that third time.
Okay, so repentance before God. Okay, carries a lot of weight. If you try to hide your sin, that's a no-no.
You will be found out.
You will be found out. It says also in the Midrash that when Isaac died, okay, when Isaac died and they were going to bury Isaac, okay, Jacob and Esau were there, and all of the tribes went to the cave of Machpelah to bury Isaac. And they sat down and mourned for him. Later, when the tribes left, Jacob remained in the cave by himself. And it says that at that time, Esau thought, now that Isaac is dead, I can finally kill Jacob. And he snuck in there into the cave to kill Jacob.
Who did?
Esau.
His brother and his twin.
No. Yeah.
And Judah saw Esau enter the cave where Jacob was, and saw Esau's wicked plot, and followed Esau. And when Esau was on the verge of murdering Jacob, Judah drew his sword and killed Esau.
He lopped off his head.
Chopped off his head.
Really?
Yeah, he
Didn't know
threw it in
that.
the cave.
So it says,
Legend has.
because what happened was when Isaac was being buried, okay, Esau was disputing who had a right to be buried in the cave. And so it ends up that Esau's head ends up in the cave and the rest of his body's buried somewhere else.
Yeah, even in the cave of Machpelah, they have like one little bitty area that's dedicated to Esau
Oh,
in that story, and yeah.
this is the oral tradition, right?
Tradition.
Yeah, the oral tradition. So it says, when Judah killed Esau, Jacob's words concerning Judah were fulfilled. Your hand is in the neck of your enemy.
Weren't they, weren't they told they were supposed to destroy Esau and the Edomites or whatever?
Well, that'd be later.
Jehovah wanted to wipe
But
off the earth and,
Amalek.
Amalek he's
Yeah.
going to destroy.
yeah.
Okay, now it says that his sons would prostrate themselves. All the tribes would bow down to Judah when they come to Jerusalem. It says that what Judah, okay, a whelp and a lion is Judah. It says that the rulership wasn't established in the very beginning, but the strength became more and more prevalent as time went on. And it came true with King David. It says, from the prey, my son, you went up. And actually they say here in the Midrash that the prey they're referring to here was Joseph. Because Judah removed himself from slaying Joseph by telling the brothers not to kill Joseph. And you also intervened and admitted your guilt, saving the life of Tamar, thus saving her from the flames of the furnace. So as a reward, Judah would stoop down and crouch like a lion, and as a lioness, who could rouse him? It says that Judah stooped down for the period of Peretz, the son of Judah, until the time of King David, when he was the leader of the tribes. Once David's kingdom was established, He would dwell safely like a lion that cannot be aroused. And that came up to the time of King Solomon, where every man, Israel dwelled safely, every man under his vine, during the time of Solomon. It says, the scepter shall never depart from Judah, nor a Torah scholar from his descendants until the Messiah comes. Okay, Shiloh. And what happens here, this was one of the signs to the children of Israel in the time of Yeshua. Okay, because the scepter was the authority, the power to rule over themselves and also have the power over life and death. And it says that the scepter would not depart until Shiloh, the Messiah, came. And when they had their trial of Yeshua, okay, the Sanhedrin got their small group of people together that were against Yeshua and had their illegal trial and wanted to crucify Yeshua. They didn't have the authority to take Yeshua's life.
Well, I think that was Roman
Right.
law in that time that
Okay?
they
The
had to go through the
scepter,
Romans.
if they had the scepter, okay, the scepter gave them the power, gave the Sanhedrin the power over life and death. But when Yeshua was there, they didn't have the power over life and death, because to crucify Yeshua, they had to ask the Romans to do it.
Yeah. Actually,
You see,
they
you see
had
the
to,
picture
yeah.
there?
They didn't have the
And
authority
Pilate,
to execute.
right, they didn't have the authority to
That's right.
execute Yeshua, the Romans had to do it.
Yeah. Had to okay.
And that was a sign to them that the scepter had departed. If the scepter was departed, that means Messiah's come. He's here.
They should have known that.
But they didn't recognize him the first time.
Yeah.
But this was one of the signs.
That's strange because it prophesied, in the Torah.
That was one of the
They
signs.
just didn't want anything upsetting their little apple cart, I think they had to go there.
And so this scepter would not depart from Judah, nor a Torah scholar. From the time of King David, the rulership is in the tribe of Judah forever. Even after the destruction of the temples, you have authority through the Sanhedrin over the children of Israel, wherever they are in exile. Even in Babylon. Those who lead the Sanhedrin or lead the people will be a descendant of the tribe of Judah. All the great people of Israel will descend from the tribe of Judah. Okay, here's a couple. They say Hillel is a descendant of David. Rabbi Chaya Rabbah, a descendant of Shephatiah ben Avital, was from David. Kalba Savua is descended from Caleb. And the family of, there was a man named Zitzit, descended from Abner, which also ties back into the tribe of Judah. So the rulership is in Judah during the whole exile until Mashiach comes, who is called Shiloh. And he is a descendant of the tribe of Judah also.
Forget Mordecai.
Yep, Mordecai.
David too, yeah.
Mordecai.
Well, Mordecai is from what tribe?
The Judah.
Benjamin.
Oh, really?
Yep. But Benjamin and Judah are tied together.
They're right next to me.
They're right next to each other, and the temple
On
was
the map.
like right
On the border.
on the border.
That was the two tribes that survived the Soon
right,
they won.
the 10 tribes left,
Yeah, they had a suit with
and they were taken into captivity in Assyria. Okay, so now what? He will blunt, the Messiah will blunt the teeth of the nations by subjecting them to his authority. Because it says when the Messiah, Yeshua, comes, what? He's gonna rule them with a rod of iron, right?
Absolutely.
And he says what? He will gather the children of Israel to Jerusalem. Okay, it says they will be a noble vine, and they're going to build the temple.
Now, the last temple, wait a minute. I read where there will not be a temple in the city. The great city of Zion,
Well, that's later. That's after the millennium.
during the millennium.
After the millennium.
It
When you
said,
have the new heavens and the new earth, there's no temple there.
Yeah, the
For
Father
the
will
Lord
not
is
reside in
delight,
the temple. That kind of surprised me. He'll have a throne, but he won't be.
And he says here that he will wash his garments in wine. Okay, it talks about that in the book of Revelation.
Who will? Who's it?
The Messiah.
Yeah.
His raiment in the blood of the grapes. And it refers to the blood of the sacrifices, which means when the temple is rebuilt, because they'll be purified by this. The blood of the grapes is also compared to the revenge that God will take on Edom, on the Edomites. And it's also tied in with the Messiah, because the Torah is compared to wine. It says here that because it says that Judah's area would be so blessed with wine and the vines. Okay, you remember when we talked about in one of the Torah portions a long time ago, when they went, the children of Israel went to spy out the land, took 8 men
Huge grapes.
to carry 1 cluster of grapes.
Said there were giants down there. I guess they
And we'll
carried
get
grapes.
to that Torah portion after a while.
Yeah.
But it says here that to carry even a small vine from the territory of Judah, that it would take a donkey to carry it, to carry 1 grapevine. And to harvest the large vine, they would have to use 2 donkeys to haul it. It said that his eyes would be red because the abundance of wine, and his teeth would be white from the abundance of milk. So he would have the blessing of wine and milk in Judah's portion. The descendants of Judah would be members of the Sanhedrin. They would be leaders in the eyes of the community, and they would be very knowledgeable in the Torah, likened to wine. And they would be the ones that would teach the halakha, the way that we're supposed to walk. Okay, so there's a lot in the tribe of Judah. And it says actually that all of the tribes would receive a similar blessing as far as their agriculture was concerned. All of the produce in the land of Canaan. It was a land that flows with milk and honey.
Yeah.
Yeah, always been an agricultural economy there in Israel.
Okay, so now I guess we're up to Angela. And
Well, I saw some grapes in the Walmart here a while back, and I couldn't believe how big they are.
Were they seeded?
Some of them are.
Juicy grapes.
Were they
Seeded
seeded
ones.
or?
Seedless.
Seeds, no, the ones that seeds are the
Yeah,
big.
the ones with the seeds in.
so go ahead and read from verse
So,
Those are the best.
13, through 20, let's see, through 21.
Okay. 13. Zebulun shall settle by seashores. He shall be at the ship's harbor, and his last border will reach Zidon. Issachar is a strong-boned donkey. He rests between the boundaries. He saw tranquility, that it was good, and the land, that it was pleasant. Yet he bent his shoulder to bear, and he became an indentured laborer. Dan will avenge his people. The tribes of Israel will be united as one. Dan will be a serpent on the highway, a viper by the path, that bites a horse's heels so its rider falls backward. For your salvation do I long, O Hashem. Gad will recruit a regiment, and it will retreat on its heel. From Asher his bread will have richness, and he will provide kingly delicacies. Naphtali is a hind let loose who delivers beautiful sayings.
Okay. So now we'll go through and we start out with Zebulun, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Zebulun dwells where? He dwells by the sea of Galilee, sometimes called Tiberias, and of Gennesaret, and also the Mediterranean Sea. Borders of the tribe when settled in the land of Canaan toward the sea, according to Joshua 19:10. The territory was drawn by lot, matching Jacob's prophecy. Okay, Zebulun was a haven for ships. And it says then that his border would be unto Sidon. This does not mean exactly the city of Sidon. Okay, but actually means from Carmel in the sea to the lake of Gennesaret. They say it's about 40 miles from Sidon, and it's actually talking about Phoenicia, which is the chief city in Sidon. In Isaiah 23:2 in the Septuagint, it says Phoenicia instead of Sidon. And Carmel was the border, and Jerome says that it was on the border of Phoenicia. So Zebulun has the ships, and Zebulun is the one that's going to go out and trade with the rest of the world. Zebulun is the merchants. Okay, so they're going to send out their ships, and they're going to take goods from the land of Canaan, and they're going to trade for goods from other nations, and they're going to commerce. They're going to trade things back and forth from all over the world. And their responsibility was to take the profits or the gains of this trading to support the tribe of Issachar. And Issachar, the tribe of Issachar, was supposed to be devoted mainly to Torah study. And because Zebulun supports Issachar in this world with the physical things, it says that they would be rewarded with the tribe of Issachar in the world to come, because they're supporting the Torah scholars. So Issachar was strong and able to carry burdens, and their chief occupation was husbandry. They were taking care of animals. They also did agriculture. And it says that they were strong, and actually being strong refers to bearing the yoke of the law. Now remember, Yeshua HaMashiach says what? My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And the tribe of Issachar was responsible for calculating all of the years and the days, the appropriate time to celebrate the different feasts and the festivals, and all of the different things that they were supposed to do. and the intercalculation of all the years.
That gives you a lot more detail on what's in the regular.
Yeah,
Canon
okay, and
scripts.
they had the valleys of Esdraelon and Jezreel, and in Gilboa they had corn and wine, and they stayed at home, and they supported the other tribes. Okay, Issachar supported the other tribes with food. When they went into battle with all their necessities that they needed. So basically, Issachar became the supply chain when they went into battle.
Oh, okay.
My Bible says he bowed his shoulder to bear and became a servant under taskwork. Look for the letters up there.
So now they say Issachar, I'll use the word donkey. Issachar is a bony donkey. And they say that Issachar, as we said before, would produce Torah students. It said if Jacob described them as a lion or a panther rather than a donkey, no. They said the explanation of this point is that a donkey's character is different from all the other animals.
That's for sure.
Stubborn.
A donkey says that a donkey does not rebel against its master when he puts a burden on it, but bears it patiently, just as Issachar bore the yoke of the Torah.
Nice.
Once they're properly trained.
Not like that.
Okay? So
Well,
Issachar,
Yeshua
Issachar the
wrote
Torah student, Issachar the Torah student disregards his own honor and lives to glorify God's name. Okay, just as a donkey has no permanent stable but crouches down to sleep at the borders of the city, so is Issachar. The Torah student is prepared to sleep on the bare ground so that he can devote himself to Torah study. Jacob compared Issachar to the donkey because, like the donkey, a Torah student is prepared to sacrifice the conveniences of life to study Torah.
Say that again.
Okay, sacrifice the conveniences of life for the sake of Torah study.
Touche.
Right?
And he says that Issachar saw that rest was good. He had peace of mind and freedom from what? The evil inclination, because he spent this time studying Torah.
Uh-huh.
Heard about that idle mind, the workshop.
Okay, Issachar's land was pleasant. It was blessed and productive, enabling them to study Torah without having to spend lots of time taking care of their business. So basically, the Lord made their fields.
You gotta work on those things though, before
Yeah.
you finish.
But what he
Yeah.
did for the
Can't let
tribe of
fields sit
Issachar,
there and
what he
rot.
did for the tribe of Issachar here is that he blessed their fields and their produce, so they spent a minimal amount of time in the field and spent most of their time studying
Studying.
Torah.
So they were greatly blessed.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, where a normal regular farmer might have to go out and keep
Oh,
pulling
yeah.
weeds all the time,
Daylight till
They didn't
after
have
they,
to
dark.
they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
It's a bone.
That's awesome.
It
That's
said-
why it says he saw tranquility, that it was good,
Yeah.
and the land, that it was pleasant.
Yeah, and it goes on and it says this, the fruits in Issachar's portion, it says, were so gigantic that when they sold them to other nations, the other nations couldn't believe how big the fruit was.
Wow.
They were
Oh, it is
astonished
natural.
by how big it was.
Yeah.
Do people wonder about this fruit? Well, their owners study Torah day and night. That's how you understand how they have such good fruit. God gave them fruit in proportion to the effort that they put into Torah study.
Oh, so the more they study,
The more
word
they
of
studied
God,
Torah, the bigger the fruit
bigger
was.
the fruit. That's awesome.
Let's study Torah a little more in the spring.
And actually,
That's right.
and actually, we have the same thing
Yeah,
today.
yeah, it happens
Because
today.
what's our fruit today? The fruit is the people, right? We show the light of the Torah to people. The fruit is people, the fruit is people coming to know Yeshua, right?
Mhm.
The fruit is people coming to know Yeshua the Messiah.
You know, it mentions something in the New Testament about these Bereans.
Mhm.
You know,
They studied the scripture to see whether the things that people said were true or not.
I wonder if there's any connection to these people going back, descendants or something.
It says that he inclined his shoulder to bear the burden of the Torah. And he became a servant of God and clinged to God and his service. Okay? And in the tribe of Issachar, okay, this is just a little thing, right? 200 heads of the Sanhedrin came from the tribe of Issachar.
Wow. So they were very studied then.
And they were the
Really into
ones,
the Torah.
okay, they were the ones who decided when people had questions about the Holocaust, the way that the different mitzvot were to be carried out, the way we were supposed to walk, what we were supposed to do. Most of those decisions were by leaders in the tribe of Issachar. Okay, and then we come to the tribe of Dan. It says that Dan shall judge the people and is special among all of the tribes. Dan will provide a judge as great as the leaders of Judah. And who's the judge that comes from the tribe of Dan? Samson.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay, the judge Samson comes from the tribe of Dan. And remember, the tribe of Dan were the ones that set up the golden calf, was set up by Jeroboam
Yeah.
on the border of
they're
Israel.
kinda bad dude.
Huh?
Well, they were misguided.
Yeah, so we come, now Samson,
Yeah.
Samson, it says that Dan would be like a serpent in the way. And it was a prophecy about Samson.
Did they ever think he was the Messiah?
They said Samson was likened to a serpent. It says just like a snake was vindictive, Samson would take revenge on the Philistines. Okay, Samson would take every opportunity to provoke the Philistines. Okay? It says here that snakes do not charge the enemy in a swarm, but snakes attack individually. Samson attacked the Philistines single-handedly.
Yeah.
Okay? So he didn't have a group of men with him. Whenever Samson went to fight the enemy, he went by himself. It says, just as the power of the snake was in its head, so Samson's strength was in his head, because why? He killed the enemy by the power of being a Nazarite. Okay,
Even
for which his
chained up.
hair, he didn't cut his hair, right?
Right. But even after he was chained up, he
Yep.
still brought the walls of
Yep.
the palace down.
Yeah,
and
we'll
killed-
get that in a minute, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, he defeats the enemy. Just as the snake's venom is fatal even in its death, So Samson will kill the Philistines even in his death,
Yeah.
just like Angela was mentioning here. So Samson ended up with a woman named Delilah, right? And Delilah betrayed Samson, and the Philistines, they cut off Samson's hair, and then he was weak, just like everybody else, right? Because his vow was broken. And when the Philistines did this, they bored out his eyes, it says, so he was blinded. And basically they used Samson just like an animal. Okay? They took him out and they made him grind grain in the middle of the prison house. So basically they had this bar in front of him, and all he did was push this bar around that was connected to the millstone to grind the grain, and you just walk around in circles all day grinding grain.
They normally have an ox or something in there, wouldn't you?
Normally they would have an ox or some kind of animal. He was the replacement for the animal, Samson was.
Wow.
That's how they treated Samson. Okay, they gouged out his eyes and they just had him walking around grinding grain.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay? But, but they forgot that the strength was in his hair. And as he did this day after day, week after week, month after month, his hair was growing back and his strength was returning. And so they commanded Samson, and they wanted him to make merry for them, and so they brought him to this stadium.
And what did they do? They made fun of him.
And they made fun of Samson. And Samson got between the pillars of the house. He said, "Let me feel the pillars on which this house rests, so that I can lean on them." The Colosseum was full of Philistines. The roof alone contained 3,000 Philistines on the roof of the Colosseum. Can't imagine how many people were there if they had 3,000 just on the roof.
And those are probably high-class citizens like. And
Okay?
royalty and well-to-do.
And so it says here,
Alex, yeah.
Samson said, "God, remember the 22 years I judged Israel selflessly, never commanding even one of them. Carry my stick from this place to the next. I know that in Olam Haba I will be compensated for the loss of my eyes. I am willing to forgo half of my future reward if you give me strength just now to perform Kiddush Hashem by taking revenge on the Philistines." And he pulled on the pillars and the whole Colosseum collapsed.
Yeah.
And he killed all of the Philistines. The Philistines, all those on the roof were killed, and all of those under the roof were crushed by the roof coming down. And after this, Samson died in the incident. But after this, the Philistines were afraid. For another 20 years, they didn't bother the children of Israel after Samson died.
Oh, yeah.
He was like a
One of them
viper.
was like that, but now.
He was like a viper on the road. In spite of Samson's handicap, he overcame the Philistines with strength and holiness. He bites the horse's heel so that it falls backward. Jacob foretold that Samson would slay 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. My salvation is in Hashem. And that's what he says. At the end of Dan's blessing. Right. For your salvation I long.
You know whose name is in here in Hebrew? Lo Yeshua Techa.
Yeah, like you.
Kiyuriti Adonai.
Yeah, say that again, Debbie, out loud.
Lo Yeshua Techa Kiyuriti Adonai. Yeshua, take out the name Yeshua is right in there.
For your
Right.
You can't
salvation.
miss it.
Right.
Yod,
And
Shin,
And so in this Torah
and an iron.
portion,
Yeshua.
For
Yeshua-
Yeshua do I long.
for
Amen.
Yeshua do I long, and it's right in the Torah
Oh
portion.
Hashem.
Ding, ding, everybody.
Right, and it's right in the part about
Yeah,
the blessing of the tribe of Dan, right?
Genesis
yes it is.
49,
It's the last
18.
comment on it.
Genesis 49:18. And
Yeshua's
so
name.
right here, we can end and say this Torah portion is about
Yeshua.
Yeshua, because right here, he's calling for salvation. That's what Yeshua's name means.
Yeshua's name.
Amen.
And so this
Yeah,
Torah
yeah.
portion is
All
all about
about
Yeshua.
Yeah.
And at the end of the Torah portion, we say what? Kazak, Kazak, Venice, Kazak, be strong, be strong, and may we be strengthened.
And then Shalom
Amen.
Amen.
out there, listening loud.
And